Henry Mason, known simply as Henry to his friends, glanced at his phone after leaving a voicemail for Olivia, whom he affectionately called Liv, his wife of 5 years. He had just secured a service contract with a prominent company based in California, which had branches nationwide. Henry was confident his boss, Alex Carter, would be pleased, as this new deal promised considerable expansion for their firm. It also meant a significant raise for Henry, and he wondered if this might finally be the right moment for him and Liv to start the family they had always dreamed of. However, ever since a recent camping trip with Alex, nagging doubts had started to creep into his mind. After the trip, something seemed off with Liv. She appeared distant and slightly irritable. It didn't end there. When they got home and tossed their clothes into the hamper, Henry noticed something troubling. A pair of Liv's panties had a suspicious stain in the gusset. Upon closer inspection, it was clear that the substance had dried, and it carried a distinct odor. That was when the realization hit Henry, and he felt his world collapse. Unsure whose fluids were in her underwear, he vowed to uncover the truth. Knowing he had a trip planned to the West Coast, he decided to consult an attorney to understand his options if Liv was indeed unfaithful. He feared their marriage would be over. "Are you certain your wife is cheating?" Grace Bennett asked. Grace, a family law attorney recommended by a friend who had recently divorced his unfaithful wife, looked concerned. "I'm not entirely sure," Henry admitted, "but I need to find out. If she is, I want a divorce." Grace nodded. "Well, most divorces in this state are no fault, but you could file on the grounds of adultery if you have solid proof." Henry asked, "You mean like photos or videos?" "Exactly," Grace confirmed. "If you want, I can have an investigator monitor her activities to find out the truth." "Please do," Henry said, determined. "What can I expect in a divorce?" Grace explained, "Since she earns about the same as you with her teaching job, alimony likely won't be an issue. You don't have any property or kids, so the assets will be split equally. You'll keep your retirement, and she'll keep hers, if we can prove she's cheating. We can leverage that to ensure a more favorable settlement. I'll start the paperwork, and we'll proceed once we have evidence." "Okay, go ahead," Henry agreed. "I'll be out of town for 3 days, which might be the perfect opportunity for her to slip up." Grace called in her investigator, Ethan Wright, who suggested Henry install a tracking app on Liv's phone. He also provided a device to record landline calls and an audio recorder to hide in her purse. Despite loathing the idea, Henry felt compelled to learn the truth. There were other signs, too. Since the camping trip, Alex had been more arrogant and condescending, as if he knew something Henry didn't. Henry managed to endure the week, and Liv drove him to the airport, kissing him as he left. "I'll call you tonight after dinner," Henry said. "Okay, dear," she replied. "Have a safe flight." That night, when Henry called as promised, he was surprised when Liv mentioned she'd be working as a waitress at a party hosted by Alex. She explained that one of the original waitresses had fallen ill, and Alex asked her to fill in. "He promised to pay me $150, Liv said. "I could use the extra money since I don't start back at work for a couple of weeks." Although Henry knew she needed the cash, something felt off. "Really?" he asked. "All right, go ahead, but be careful and let me know how it goes." "I will," she replied. "You know I love you, right?" "Yeah," Henry said. "I love you too. Good night." Ending the call, Henry felt a knot in his stomach. He contacted Ethan, informing him of Liv's plan to work at Alex's party. "Got it," Ethan said. "We'll keep an eye on her and update you." The next day, Henry tried calling Liv, but she didn't answer. Calls to their home phone also went to voicemail. He feared she might have spent the night with Alex. His worst suspicions were confirmed when he received an email from Ethan later that afternoon. "Liv spent the night at Carter's house and is still there," the email read. "She was quite busy last night. I've attached some photos, but they're explicit. I'll provide a full report when you return." Henry opened the attachments, his heart sinking. There was Liv, once the love of his life, in compromising positions with Alex and 2 other men he had considered friends. The second photo showed her sprawled on the floor. Overwhelmed, Henry's hands trembled and tears streamed down his face. He tried calling her again, but her phone went straight to voicemail. The house phone was the same, just an answering machine. Without leaving a message, he went to the hotel bar to drown his sorrows. The next morning, Henry checked the tracker on Liv's phone, which still indicated it was at Alex's house. Ethan's email confirmed it, with 2 more photos of Liv involved in a group encounter with multiple men, including Alex, his son Chris, and others from Alex's firm. Henry had once trusted these men, but now they seemed like strangers. He didn't recognize the other men in the photos and assumed they were Chris's friends. After finishing his business in California, Henry checked out of his hotel early to catch a flight home. When he arrived, Liv's car was missing, and the tracker still showed her phone at Alex's house. Henry changed clothes and called Grace's office, relieved she could see him that afternoon. He then called Liv's cell. "Hello," she answered, sounding breathless. "It's me, Henry. Where are you?" he asked. "I'm at home, just getting ready for the new semester," she replied. Henry was stunned by her blatant lie. "I see. Well, I'm done here in California and heading home." "Oh, good," she said. "I've missed you. Call when you land, and I'll pick you up." "No need," he replied. "I'll take a taxi. Goodbye." He hung up, wondering if she noticed he hadn't said "I love you" or mentioned seeing her later. Shaking his head, he left for Grace's office. Meanwhile, Liv stared at her phone, puzzled. Henry had always ended their calls with "I love you," but not this time. She had planned to return home after the first night, but being with Alex and Chris felt too good to leave. She convinced herself that it was just a fling and would end once her classes began. Henry would never find out. Instead, she spent another day and night at Alex's, indulging in more encounters with Alex, Chris, and his friends. When Alex returned from work, he found Liv with his son, and they both joined in. Afterward, Alex grinned wickedly at her. "Maybe I should send your husband away more often," he said. "You know I have classes starting," Liv replied. "I can't keep doing this once Henry's home." "Why not?" Alex asked. "Maybe Henry would get a kick out of watching you with real men for a change." Both Alex and Chris laughed, leaving Liv to wonder what she had gotten herself into. Liv admitted, "Well, I have to say, I've become addicted to you, but I still love Henry and don't want to hurt him." "Maybe I can arrange for him to be away on weekends," Alex suggested. "That way you can come over and play house with us." "That sounds fun," Liv replied, "but he's going to find out sooner or later. Henry's not stupid." "Don't worry," Alex said, picking up his camera. "I'll handle him. Just one thing." "What's that?" she asked. "I don't want you sleeping with him anymore," Alex said. "You belong to us now." "Got it," Liv responded. "But how am I supposed to do that?" "You'll figure it out," Alex said. "Make up an excuse like a headache or something." "I'll try," Liv said, agreeing. None of them noticed the service van parked across the street from Alex's house or the mini cameras attached to the windows, recording all of Liv's activities. Henry was shattered when he saw the evidence Ethan had gathered. Alongside the photos, Ethan had 2 SD cards filled with videos showing his wife engaging in acts with multiple men, things she had never done with him. Henry's love for her had crumbled after seeing her behavior. Grace did her best to console him, but the situation seemed hopeless. After 5 years of marriage, how had she turned into this? He wondered what he had done to deserve this betrayal, especially from Alex, whom he had once considered a friend. "I'll draft the divorce papers citing adultery," Grace said. "If you want, I can also file for alienation of affection against Alex and the others. Those cases don't usually go far, but we might get a decent settlement." "Do whatever you need to," Henry said. "Just don't do anything reckless." "Don't worry," Grace replied. "I'd rather not have to bail you out of jail." Henry shook his head. "I'm not going to do anything foolish. When can you have the papers ready?" "I can have everything done in a couple of days," Grace said. "In the meantime, try to act normal around your wife." "I'm not a great actor," Henry replied. "And I'm not touching her again. Who knows what she's caught from all those men." "Tell her you're not feeling well," Grace suggested. "That should buy you some time." "Yeah, okay," Henry said before leaving. Sitting in his car, Henry realized he couldn't work for Alex anymore or be around the men who had betrayed him. He pulled out his phone, found the contact he needed, and dialed. Thompson here, the voice on the other end said. "David, it's Henry Mason," Henry said. "Henry, how are you?" My friend David Thompson, an executive at Empire, replied. "I've been better," Henry admitted. Is that position at Empire still open? Absolutely, David said. Have you finally decided to join a reputable company? Yeah, something like that, Henry said. Things have come to light, and I can't stay where I am anymore. I'm sorry to hear that, David said. Anything I can do? Just give me the job, Henry said. I'll give you the same dedication I gave Alex. Of course, David agreed. How does starting Monday sound? Monday works, Henry said. Perfect, David said. Why don't you and Liv come over tonight? Emily's making her famous lasagna. We can catch up, and I'll go over the compensation package. I'd love to, but Liv won't be able to make it, Henry said. Oh? What's going on? David asked, sounding concerned. I'd rather not discuss it over the phone, Henry said. I'll explain more when we meet. Understood, David said. You know, Emily's a licensed counselor. If you'd like, she might be able to offer some guidance. That sounds good. Thanks, Henry said. Great, David replied. I'll let Emily know. How about 6:30 tonight? 6:30 is perfect, Henry agreed. Thanks again. Anytime, David said, ending the call. Henry felt a slight sense of relief as he drove home. When he arrived, Liv's car was still not there. He grabbed his briefcase, went inside, took a quick shower, changed, and sat down to draft his resignation letter. Liv came home around 5 p.m. and saw Henry at his computer. She approached him for a kiss, but he turned his head, and she ended up kissing his cheek instead. Is everything okay? She asked, puzzled. Not really, Henry said. I'm not feeling great. Probably just jet lag or something. I'll crash on the futon tonight. Crash on the futon? She asked. Where are you going? I have a dinner meeting, he replied. Meeting someone special? She asked, a hint of worry in her voice. Are you asking if I'm cheating on you? Henry responded coldly. I've never cheated on you, and I don't plan to. Can you say the same? She flinched. Does he know? She wondered in a panic. Out loud, she said, I can't. Henry remained suspicious. How was your job at Alex's house? He asked, probing. It went well, she said. It was fun, though a bit challenging. I'm sure, Henry said flatly. He glanced at his watch. I need to get going. He shut down his computer, stood up, and walked past Liv without another word, heading to the bedroom to change into something more formal. When he reappeared, Liv was on the couch. How long will you be gone? She asked. Not sure, Henry said. Don't wait up. He grabbed his keys and left. Liv noticed he didn't kiss her goodbye or say I love you, which was unlike him. After he drove off, she picked up the phone and called Alex, unaware that the call was being recorded. Alex, I think Henry knows something, she said, her voice shaking. Really? What makes you think that? Alex asked. He wouldn't touch me. He was so cold and distant. He didn't even kiss me goodbye or say he loves me, she said. He just left, saying he had a dinner meeting. Interesting, Alex said. Did he mention who he was meeting? No, she said. Alex, what if he knows? What if he's planning to leave me? So what if he does? Alex sneered. You can always stay with us, and don't worry about Henry. I'll keep him so busy he won't notice anything. But I don't want to lose him, Liv said, her voice breaking. I still love him. Alex laughed mockingly. Yeah, you've shown how much you love him these past few days. That's not funny, Alex, she said. I enjoyed what happened, but I still love him. I don't want to lose him. Right, Alex said dismissively. Let him vent. He'll come around eventually. If not, we'll handle it. You're not going to hurt him, are you? Liv asked, fear creeping into her voice. Not directly, Alex said, but we'll make sure he understands how things will be from now on. You'll help with that. What do you mean? Liv asked, shocked. When the time comes, you'll help us explain things to him. Remember, you belong to us now. I've got evidence of what you've done, and it's in your best interest to keep Henry in line. You wouldn't dare, Liv said. Oh, I would, Alex said. I've got videos from the camping trip and other compromising footage. You're practically mine now, so it's up to you to keep Henry in check. Feeling trapped, Liv gave in. Okay, Alex, but please don't hurt him. Alex sneered. Yeah, we'll see, he said, ending the call. Henry arrived at the Thompsons' large two-story home, where David greeted him with a smile and took the bottle of wine he had brought. Henry followed David into the dining room, where Emily was waiting with her well-known lasagna. Henry, this is my wife, Emily, David introduced. Emily, meet Henry Mason, our new account rep. Henry shook Emily's hand. Nice to meet you, Emily. Likewise, she responded warmly. Please, just call me Emily. They sat at the table as Emily served the lasagna and David poured the wine. Henry took a bite and was instantly impressed. This is the best lasagna I've ever tasted, he said. I'm glad you like it, Emily smiled. It's one of my favorite dishes to make. David leaned in, curious. So, Henry, why did you leave Alex so suddenly? Did something happen? Henry sighed deeply. Yeah, something did, he admitted. Tell us about it, Emily encouraged. Henry recounted his story, and David's expression turned serious. That's rough. I'm sorry, David said. I've been through something similar, although the circumstances were different. So what's next for you besides the job change? I've consulted a lawyer, and I'm filing for divorce, Henry replied. My lawyer says it'll be a straightforward split. Have you thought about counseling? Emily asked gently. At this point, it feels too late, Henry admitted. I don't even recognize who Liv has become. It's like she changed overnight. How are you coping? Emily asked sympathetically. Not great, Henry confessed. My lawyer advises me to act normal around Liv, but it's tough. I can barely stand to be near her. Counseling might help, Emily suggested softly. Maybe, Henry said, considering. I'll think about it, David chimed in. Emily's really good at what she does. She helped me through a tough time, and I know she can help you too. Plus, your benefits cover it. That's a plus, Henry said with a small laugh. But seriously, she can help, David insisted. Can you fit Henry into your schedule? David asked Emily. Of course, Emily agreed. I think an hour a week would be good. What do you think, Henry? Henry thought for a moment. All right, I'll give it a try, he decided. David smiled, giving Henry a reassuring pat on the shoulder. Good choice. Work it out with Emily and let me know if you need anything else. Thanks, Henry said. I will. David then turned to Henry. Now, we need to discuss your new role. David gestured toward his office. Go ahead, Emily said with a smile. I'm looking forward to working with you too, Henry. Thanks, Henry replied as he followed David. They spent the next 2 hours discussing his new job, and by the end, Henry felt like he was regaining control over his life. Henry returned home around 10 p.m., hoping Liv was alone as he pulled into the driveway. Inside, Liv was on the couch. How did your meeting go? She asked. It went well, Henry replied curtly. I'm going to bed now. Good night. He headed to the second bedroom where his computer was set up. As he started undressing, Liv followed him. Are you sleeping in here now? She asked. Yes, Henry said. I'm still not feeling well, so I'll take the futon. Oh, Liv said, sounding disappointed. I was hoping we could, spend some time together. You've been gone for 3 days, not tonight, Henry said, feeling uneasy about being close to her. Maybe tomorrow, we'll see. Liv nodded and left, confused, as Henry began his night routine, unable to shake the feeling of betrayal. The next morning, Henry got up before Liv, grabbed his resignation letter, and made a coffee. He noticed Liv's purse on the counter and took the chance to retrieve the audio recorder, downloading the recording from the previous day's phone call before leaving without a word. Liv heard the door close and remained in bed, tears streaming down her face. At the office, Henry barely interacted with anyone. He greeted his secretary, then shut himself in his office, packing his things when Alex walked in. What's going on? Alex asked, noticing the packed boxes. Henry pulled out 2 envelopes. One is the signed contract from California, he said. The other is my resignation, effective immediately. I expect my final pay, including unused vacation time. Resignation, Alex repeated, shocked. Why? I need you. You really don't know? Henry asked, frustrated. I found out some things and decided I can't stay here. I've accepted another job. Wait, Alex pleaded. Can't we talk about this? There's nothing to discuss, Henry said coldly. I thought we were friends, but you betrayed me and destroyed my marriage. Find someone else to manipulate, so this is about your wife, Alex sneered. She was more than willing. Don't let this ruin your career. She'll come back once she's had her fun. Are you seriously telling me to just accept this? Henry asked, disgusted. How long has this been going on? It started at the campout. Alex grinned. While you were skiing, she came on to me in your tent, told me I was better than you. That's why you sent me away on business, wasn't it? To get me out of the way, Henry accused. Yeah, so what? Alex replied smugly. And the waitress gig at your party was just an excuse to get her alone, right? Pretty much, Alex admitted. Henry took out his phone, stopping the audio recording. Thanks for confirming everything, he said icily. I'm done here. Henry grabbed his belongings. You can't use that recording, Alex tried to argue. We'll see, Henry said, leaving. Goodbye, Alex. Rot in hell. As Henry stormed out, Alex was left stunned. He wondered how Henry had discovered the affair with Liv. Moments later, Alex called Liv. He resigned, Alex said. He knows something. What did you tell him? Liv asked, her voice shaking. The truth, Alex said. I told him about the campout, you idiot, Liv snapped. Why would you tell him that? He asked, Alex said defensively. He also left a picture of you on his desk, said he didn't want it. Liv's tears fell harder. So what now? She asked. Not my problem, Alex said dismissively. He's your husband. Deal with it. Liv stared at her phone, crying. She didn't want a divorce but knew Henry wouldn't forgive her infidelity. Determined to fix her marriage, she sat on the couch, sobbing. A few minutes later, Henry pulled into the driveway. He checked for Alex's car but saw nothing. Gathering his box and briefcase, Henry went inside, ready to move on with his life. Henry found Liv sitting on the couch but didn't acknowledge her. Instead, he headed straight to his office, locked the door, and reviewed the voice recordings. He found the call between Liv and Alex, then forwarded it to his lawyer. Afterward, he called her. Hello, Henry, she answered. I just received your email and am processing the paperwork now. Great, Henry replied. When can they be served? If you'd like, I can have my process server deliver them this afternoon, she offered. Will that work? Yes, that's fine, Henry agreed. Thanks, he said before ending the call. Henry went to his gun safe, retrieved his old .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol and set it on the kitchen table. He wasn't planning to use it, but wanted to be prepared in case of trouble. Henry walked into the kitchen, placing his briefcase on the table. Liv looked up, her eyes red from crying. We need to talk, Henry said, pointing at the gun. Is that really necessary? She asked, glancing nervously at the weapon. I hope not, Henry replied. I just want to be cautious in case your lover decides to drop by. My lover? Liv asked, bewildered. Don't play dumb with me, Henry said coldly. I'm not in the mood for games. Sit down, we need to discuss some things. Liv sat, fear evident on her face. First off, Henry began, later today, someone will come by to serve you with divorce papers. Liv's face turned pale. Divorce? Why? I don't want that. I love you, she pleaded. Spare me, Henry said. I know all about your affairs with Alex, his son, and the other men. I filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery. Adultery? Liv asked, shocked. You don't have proof? Henry smirked, pulling out an envelope and dropping several time-stamped photos on the table, each showing her with different men, including Alex. I also have video and audio evidence, he said. Want to see? Liv shook her head, defeated. Good, Henry continued. Given the circumstances, I've been more than fair. No alimony. You get half of what's in the bank. We each keep our retirement accounts, and you can keep your personal belongings. I've already cancelled your credit card and have a cashier's check for your share of the remaining funds. Plus, there's a restraining order requiring you to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my home, and my workplace. You have until you're served to pack your things. You're kicking me out? Liv asked, her voice breaking. Basically, Henry replied. But what if I fight the divorce? She asked, desperation in her voice. Henry laughed bitterly. I wouldn't recommend it. Think about what would happen if these photos and videos were made public. Do you think the school board would want someone like you teaching their kids? I know I wouldn't. You wouldn't dare, Liv said, her voice trembling. Do you want to take that risk? Henry asked coldly. Liv looked down, unable to meet his eyes. No, she said quietly. I don't want to lose my job. Right, Henry said. And there are a couple more things. You'll need to return your rings and stop using my last name. Oh God, Liv said, removing her rings. You've turned into a heartless bastard. Yeah, Henry said. I guess I have. But I need to know one thing. What made you go from being a loving, faithful wife to someone who cheats with anyone? Liv looked away, ashamed. It started on the second day of the camping trip. You were on the boat, and I was in the tent. Alex came by while I was resting, naked. At first he seemed embarrassed, but then so, A guy with a bigger Henry interrupted, disgusted. That's all it took for you to become a cheater. How many times did you sleep with him on that trip? Twice, Liv admitted. Once when you were water skiing, and again when Alex sent you back to the office. Henry shook his head, staring at the photos. None of your lovers used protection, he asked. Weren't you worried about pregnancy or STDs? I'm still on the pill, Liv said, her voice small. That doesn't guarantee anything, Henry replied. And you can still catch diseases. Was that your plan? Oh God, no, Liv said, horrified. Henry just shook his head, feeling disappointed and disillusioned. You know, Henry began, throughout our relationship, I've been hit on by women who looked like goddesses compared to you. I turned them all down because I believed I had a loving, faithful wife at home. I would never do anything to hurt her. But you didn't even think about how your actions would affect me. All you wanted was a bigger guy or 10. I hope it was worth it. Henry's gaze was steely, more resolute than Liv had ever seen. Get your things packed. I expect you to be gone by the time you're served. Henry, please, Liv began, her voice trembling. Can't we get some counseling? I'll never do it again, I promise. Can't you forgive me just this once? I will never forgive you, Henry said, his expression colder than she'd ever seen. From the moment Alex dropped his pants, you were willing, and I can't forgive that level of betrayal. But don't you love me enough to get past this? Liv asked, desperation in her eyes. Henry shook his head. No. Right now I can't even stand to look at you. The sooner you're out of my life, the better. Now go start packing. Whatever you leave behind will be burned, thrown out, or donated to Goodwill. Sobbing, Liv got up and went to the master bedroom to pack. Henry watched as she dragged out trash bag after trash bag, but she stopped once and looked at him. Can you at least help me get this to my car? Nope, Henry said. Your trash, you deal with it. And remember, whatever you leave behind will be burned or tossed, including pictures and your wedding dress. You'd burn my wedding dress? Liv asked, shocked. My parents paid thousands for that. Well, Henry said, you'd better take it if you don't want it burned. Tears streaming down her face, Liv carried the bag out to her car and returned for another. Henry couldn't help but think, how much stuff does she have? A couple of hours later, Liv sat down, exhausted. I can't fit anything else in the car. Can I come back later for the rest? No, Henry said firmly. You won't be allowed within 500 feet of this place. Ask your parents to come for it if you want. I'll hold off on tossing anything for a few days. Thank you, Henry, Liv said softly. I appreciate that. Oh my God, she suddenly realized. What will I tell my parents? Tried telling them the truth for once, Henry suggested. Tell them you cheated on me with my boss and others, and that's why I kicked you out. Seriously, she asked, her voice trembling. They'll disown me, not my problem, Henry said. But it'll be worse if you try to paint me as the bad guy or sugarcoat the situation. You know how your parents feel about lying. Just then, there was a knock at the door. I think that's for you, Henry said. Liv opened the door to find a sheriff's deputy. Olivia Mason, he asked. She nodded. That's me. Do you have some ID? The deputy asked. Liv showed him her driver's license, and after examining it, he returned it along with an envelope. You've been served, ma'am. There's also a restraining order that requires you to vacate the premises immediately. You can sign the divorce papers now if you want. Liv reviewed the documents and signed them. I'll get these back to the attorney, the deputy said. You need to leave now. If you try to return, you'll be arrested. Do you understand? Yes, Liv replied, tears streaming down her face. She glanced back at Henry. I'm so sorry. Yeah, me too, Henry said. Goodbye, she whispered as she walked away. The deputy gave Henry a nod before departing. Over the next few days, Henry's life became chaotic. Liv didn't contact him, but Alex called twice, leaving threatening voicemails. God damn it, Henry. Alex's voice seethed. I know you're there. If you don't drop this lawsuit, I'm coming over to kick your ass. Henry smirked and forwarded the voicemails to Grace, who informed the local sheriff's office. Liv's parents called, asking if they could collect her remaining belongings. Sure, Henry said. Just make sure she's not with you. There's a restraining order against her. Okay, Charles, Liv's father, sighed. We'll come by. When Charles and Liv's mother, Margaret, arrived, they packed Liv's remaining items and tried to convince Henry to reconsider the divorce. Henry, she made a mistake, Margaret pleaded. Surely you can forgive her and take her back. She still loves you. What did she tell you? Henry asked. She said she messed up with your boss, Margaret replied. Is that all? Henry questioned, pulling out an envelope containing photos and SD cards. He showed them to Charles and Margaret, whose faces turned pale at the explicit images. I'm sorry, she didn't tell you the whole story, Henry said. As you can see, it was much worse. Oh my God, Margaret gasped, horrified. I had no idea it was this bad. I'm so sorry, Henry. I don't blame you. Charles, red with anger, said, I'm going to have a serious talk with our daughter. Have you done anything with these photos? Not yet, Henry replied, but I warned her not to contest the divorce. They talked a bit longer before finishing the packing. After half an hour, they hugged Henry goodbye and left, wishing him well. Later that day, Henry was watching TV when he heard another knock. Peering through the peephole, he saw Alex, Chris, and 2 of his former colleagues. Henry rushed to his office, grabbed his gun, and dialed 911. Holding the gun behind his back, he opened the door slightly before they forced their way in. We're going to kick your ass, Alex snarled. Henry pulled out the pistol, pointing it at Alex, causing them to hesitate. You're not really going to shoot us, are you? Alex taunted. You don't have the guts. Do you really want to test that? Henry shot back. Just so you know, I've already called 911. The police are on their way, and if you're still here, you'll be arrested for violating the restraining order. Alex, I think he means it, one of the men said, nervously eyeing the police lights flashing outside. The sound of sirens grew louder, and red and blue lights filled the room. Yeah, Alex, I mean it, Henry reiterated. They turned to leave, but 2 large uniformed officers appeared at the door. Henry lowered his pistol. Put the gun down, so one officer instructed. Henry placed the gun on the kitchen counter. These men violated a restraining order, Henry said. They forced their way in and threatened me. I want them arrested. Do you have a copy of the order? The other officer asked. I do, Henry nodded, retrieving the envelope and handing it over. The officer reviewed the document and returned it to Henry before turning to the 4 men. Turn around, hands behind your back, he ordered. The men glared at Henry as they were cuffed and read their rights. Do you have a license for that firearm? One officer asked Henry. Yes, I do, Henry replied, showing his firearm license and NRA training card from his wallet. The officer inspected them and nodded. All right, he said. Be careful with that. I hear you, Officer, Henry responded. The following 3 months were a whirlwind for Henry. He thrived at Empire, finding his work far more fulfilling than his previous job under Alex. Weekly sessions with Emily helped him work through his trust and anger issues. He also joined a gym, working out 3 times a week, and began martial arts classes for mental discipline. Emily also suggested a course on diet and exercise, which he completed. The divorce proceeded smoothly, especially since Liv didn't contest it. The alienation of affection lawsuits, however, were more complicated. Grace had cautioned Henry that some cases might be dismissed, and indeed, 2 were. However, the case against Alex took an unexpected turn. After reviewing the evidence in Alex's financial records, the judge ruled in Henry's favor, ordering Alex to pay $1 million in restitution. Mr. Carter. The judge stated, your actions in this case are beyond reprehensible. You abused your position as Henry's employer to deliberately destroy his marriage and family. You also repeatedly violated the restraining order. Therefore, I rule in favor of the plaintiff and order you to pay $1 million in restitution. Your Honor, this is highly irregular, Alex's lawyer objected. Mr. Winthrop, the judge retorted, the court finds Mr. Carter's conduct not just irregular but utterly despicable. The order stands. When is the restitution due? Winthrop asked. Immediately, the judge replied, unless your client prefers jail time for contempt. No, Your Honor, my client will pay as ordered, Winthrop conceded. Good, the judge said, and may God help you if this check bounces. He banged the gavel, ending the hearing. Alex wrote a check and handed it to his attorney, who passed it to the bailiff. After the judge noted the check, the bailiff gave it to Grace, who then handed it to Henry. To Henry's surprise, the check cleared, and he paid Grace's share of the judgment. While working at Empire, Henry was contacted by several of Alex's former clients. News of the lawsuit had spread, and many businesses were wary of continuing to work with someone who had intentionally wrecked another man's marriage. Henry suspected Alex's business would be in serious trouble within a year. During this period, Henry avoided dating, despite being approached by several attractive women at work. He wanted to wait until his final decree was official before considering new relationships. When the final divorce decree was finalized, Henry celebrated with his co-workers, which included getting a lap dance from a very voluptuous stripper. A couple of months later, Henry received a call from Liv's mother. "Henry, this is Margaret. Do you have a few minutes?" she asked. "Sure," Margaret Henry replied. "What's going on?" "It's Liv," she said. "She's HIV positive. She just got the test results." "I'm sorry to hear that," Margaret Henry responded, "but to be honest, I'm not surprised. We're officially divorced now, so there's nothing I can do. She's not on my insurance, and I'm not responsible for her." "I understand," Margaret said, "but I was hoping you might consider talking to her for a little while." "Well, I guess I can," Henry agreed, "but I'm not sure how much good it will do." "Please, just come over and talk to her," Margaret pleaded. Henry hesitated, then said, "All right, I'll come by for a few minutes." "Thank you so much," Margaret replied. Henry drove to Margaret and Charles's house, surprised by how frail and thin Liv looked. As she approached, he waved her off, and she, visibly disappointed, sat in a chair and gestured for him to sit on the couch. "You look well," Liv noted. "Better than I remember. How have you been?" "Good, Liv," he answered. "New job, new friends, and a fresh start. How about you?" "Not well at all," she confessed. "I'm HIV positive." "That's what your mother told me," Henry said. "I'm sorry to hear that, but honestly, I'm not surprised. Do you know when you got infected?" "I think it was one of the times I was at Alex's," she said. "I had unprotected sex with several men that day." "Does Alex know?" he asked. "Not yet," she replied, shaking her head. "I need to tell him so he can get tested too. I doubt he'll take it well." "Yeah, probably not," Henry agreed. "Listen, Liv, I came to hear your apology one last time, and I was hoping you could forgive me for what I did to you. I realize now that my actions have ruined many lives. I could have stopped at any moment, but I didn't. I acted selfishly, letting my impulses overrule my judgment. And now I'm paying the price. I had the best husband and lover I could ever ask for, and I threw it all away for a momentary thrill. I know you have every reason to hate me, but I don't want to die without your forgiveness." Henry took a moment to process her words. It was the first time she truly acknowledged her actions and the harm they had caused. He could keep holding on to his resentment, but his sessions with Emily taught him that it wouldn't help him move forward. He nodded. "All right, Liv, I forgive you." She broke down, sobbing as she sat in the chair. Henry thought about comforting her with a hug and started to stand, but she motioned for him to stay seated. "Thank you so much, Henry," she wept. "That means more to me than you could ever know. I want you to find someone who loves and trusts you, marry her and have children. My time's over, but you still have your whole life ahead of you, and you deserve to be happy." "Thank you," he said. "I'll do that. And if you ever need to talk, just let me know, okay?" She wiped her tears and nodded. "I will, Henry. Thanks for coming over and talking to me. I've missed you so much these last few months." "I've missed the woman I married," Henry said softly. "How are things with Alex and Chris?" "Not good," she said, shaking her head. "Alex has become abusive. He didn't take losing to you in court well, and his business is struggling." "I've noticed," Henry said. "Has he hurt you physically?" "Not yet," she admitted, "but he's very harsh." "Do you want me to be there when you tell him about your diagnosis?" Henry offered. "No, but thanks for asking," she answered. "This is my responsibility, and I need to handle it. I keep thinking that if I'd told him to leave on that first camping trip, we might still be together." "Maybe," Henry said, "but I think it would have happened eventually. He'd been chasing you for a while." "You're probably right," she agreed. "I'm really tired and need to rest before I head back. Thanks again for coming. It means more to me than you know." "You're welcome, Liv," he said. "Remember, call me if you need to talk." She nodded faintly. "I will. Goodbye, Henry. Think of me sometimes, okay?" He sensed a finality in her tone, worried she might be contemplating something drastic. "I will," he said. "Just don't do anything rash, all right?" She smiled weakly. "I won't," she assured him. Henry stood and headed toward the door. As he was about to leave, Margaret approached and hugged him. "Thank you, Henry. This means more to her than you can imagine, and it means a lot to me too." "You're welcome, Margaret," he replied. "Keep an eye on her." "I will," she promised. A couple of weeks later, Henry was on his couch, eating dinner and watching the evening news when a report caught his attention. The bodies of a local businessman, his son, and a woman believed to be his lover were found earlier today. Police are investigating what appears to be a double murder-suicide, the news anchor announced. Jacob Carter, president and founder of Carter Consulting, along with his son and an unidentified woman, were found dead. All three had gunshot wounds. Investigations are ongoing, and more details will be released soon. Henry was stunned. He immediately called Margaret, who answered, sobbing. "Margaret, what's happening?" he asked. "We just found out Liv's dead," she cried. "It looks like that bastard Alex shot her, then his son, and finally himself." "Oh my God," Henry said. "I saw the news report and was hoping it wasn't her. I'm so sorry." "It's her," Margaret confirmed. "The police aren't certain yet, but I think she told Alex about her HIV, and he lost it. They're conducting autopsies now." "I'm really sorry," Margaret, Henry said. "I never wanted this." "I know," she replied. "Liv made her choices and paid the price, but it's still hard losing an only child. At least you made peace with her. I like to think she's in a better place." "Let me know if there's anything I can do," Henry offered. "Thank you, Henry," she said. Liv's memorial service took place a few weeks later, and Henry took time off work to support her parents. According to the autopsies, both Alex and Chris were also HIV positive, just like Liv. The police pieced together what happened. Liv told Alex about her diagnosis and suggested they all get tested. When Alex and Chris found out they were positive, Alex shot Liv in the head, then turned the gun on his son before taking his own life. Henry took a few days to mourn Liv, reflecting on the good times they had shared. One day, Hannah Brooks, a colleague from his team, paid him a surprise visit. "Hey, cowboy," she greeted him. "Care to join us for happy hour tonight? You look like you could use some company." Henry hesitated, almost declining, but then changed his mind. "Why not?" he said. "I could use some good company right now. Sure, I'll come." "Great," she said with a smile. "Come on down to the Hitchin Post after work. See you there." "I'll be there," he replied. "Thanks for the invite." As Hannah walked away, Henry reflected on how life keeps moving forward. Suddenly he heard a familiar female voice echoing in his mind, "Go for it, big boy." "She likes you." Startled, Henry looked around but saw no one. A chill ran down his spine. No, he thought, trying to dismiss it. That can't be real, or could it?